My name's Marguerite and I'm the Heritage Researcher for Auckland Council Heritage Unit. A big chunk of my job is researching the history of historic places around Auckland. My colleagues have already discussed lots of avenues of research, so I'm going to give you an overview of some other places to look, largely online, when you're researching your property. And I'll also talk about adding some context to your research and how to start researching the people who have lived in your house. So I'm going to start with the CHI, which Greg mentioned earlier, which is the Auckland Council database called the Cultural Heritage Inventory. It's a database of heritage sites around Auckland. It's an old system which was established by the Auckland Regional Council, and it contains information from legacy council documents as well as more recent information. It covers all kinds of sites, including historic heritage, maritime heritage, archaeological sites, and sites of significance to mana whenua. So we were talking a little bit before about scheduling and protection and the list. Just to make it clear, a place being on the CHI does not automatically mean that it is protected. There is an overlap, so all properties that are scheduled under the Auckland Unitary Plan can be found in the CHI, but not all properties in the CHI are scheduled under the Auckland Unitary Plan. I hope that made sense. There are two kinds of records. Places records have at least basic information noting the location and the type of the site, along with references for that. A basic record can be seen by anybody by searching the CHI publicly, and the website's up there, and you can also just Google. However, there could be more information, and this varies considerably. So if you want to see more, you can contact us and request a search, and I'll put up the email address shortly. The CHI bibliography is the second part, and this is references for books, articles and reports that are about a place. So you can see the reference online as a member of the public, but you need to contact us for a copy of the document if we're allowed to supply it. Sometimes copyright means we're not. And if you think you're going to need to use the CHI a lot, you can contact us about getting a different kind of login, which will give you different access. Another council source is GeoMaps, which is a public source. This is not in Albert Eden. This is East Coast Road on the North Shore, and it's a family home. One thing that people might not know about is that it gives you historic aerial photographs. So that long list down the side is all the different historical photographs that may apply to your area that you're searching. And this is one from 1959 showing the distinct lack of development around East Coast Road and Forest Hill prior to the Harbour Bridge opening up the North Shore. Certificates of title, which we've talked a little bit about today, they're an incredibly useful resource for finding out more about your place and the people that have lived there. You might already have your certificate of title from when you purchased your house. You can order current and historical titles from LINZ, Land Information New Zealand, through this website. So this is quite recent. You used to have to be a Land on Loan subscriber to access titles online. Now anyone can do it, and they're $5 instead of $15. And some of you probably already know, when you're researching titles, you usually start with the most recent title and work your way backwards. And as you know, they're legal documents, and they often contain quite technical language and jargon. So there's a very helpful glossary that Land Online has that will help you with the technical terminology used. And if you go back far enough with your certificates of titles, you might come across a reference to a deeds index. So these are records that were created prior to the current title system, and they may go back as far as the original Crown grant. The fun thing about them is they often also record mortgages, probates, and sometimes leases, and leases are really hard to find any other way. Good news is that these are free to access, and they're held by Archives New Zealand, and they've been fully digitised through Archway. They are usually handwritten, and they can be quite tricky to navigate. This is the Deeds Index page for Pukitutu Island, which is near Mangere, and as you can see, we've got the Crown grant to George Weeks, the grantee, and it goes through all the conveyances and mortgages up to 1913. This clerk actually has quite good handwriting. I can't guarantee that they'll all be the same. And they often also have more than one site on one page, so it's quite easy to get tangled up and find yourself following the wrong property. So you've got to keep that's definite detective work. But they are beautiful historic documents, and they often have hand-drawn plans of the site that you're looking at. So these can actually be a bit tricky to find in Archway, so I've added this slide that shows you how to find them. So you go through an advanced search, and you use the accession number, which is A1660 in the case of Auckland, and you'll already have a folio and a page number, which you found from your certificate of title. And then you go to the digitised item, and you can download the page like I did before. And this is what it looks like in the advanced search page. And you might find references to other kinds of prior references. And this is some examples: proclamation, application, gazette notices, and Crown grants. And finding these are a bit hit and miss. Some are at Archives New Zealand, some are still held by LINZ, some are digitised, some are not. So, for example, the original Crown grants, applications, and enlarged rolled plans are at Archives New Zealand, whereas smaller plans are held by LINZ. And the question earlier, LINZ has also digitised a lot of the surveyors' original field notebooks, so you can actually go through those as well, which are fantastic resources. So I'd start with Archway and Archives New Zealand myself if I was searching, and I've put their contact details up there. And they also have a series of really fantastic guides for researching land and Māori land, and so it's well worth checking those out, which are online, or visiting the reading room and talking to the archivists there, who'll be able to tell you a lot more about what they hold, because they are specialists in the Auckland area. But make sure you give yourself plenty of time, because it does take them time to retrieve the records. LINZ also has really good guidance on their website about how you find the different kinds of records, and that's well worth a look. Oh, sorry, one went too far. Joanne mentioned the survey plans and cadastral maps, which are held at Research Central. You can also get those through the LINZ website in the same way that you order a title for a charge. And as we talked about before with geomaps, aerial photos can be another way to research your property and to help you figure out when your house was built or when the area around it was developed. So Greg also mentioned RetroLens, which is a fantastic resource, a free collection of aerial photos from 1936 to 2005. It's a Crown archive, it's very high quality. There's about 500,000 images, covers the whole country. They're high resolution, you can download them and zoom into your heart's content, and they've got a Creative Commons license, so if you have a blog or a website or a publication, you can use them freely. Other image sources are Auckland Libraries, Auckland War Memorial Museum, which has a variety of aerial and street photos, and the Alexander Turnbull Library in Wellington, especially the amazing White's Aviation Collection, which has now become freely available. You can download that and again zoom to your heart's content. Adding a bit more context and finding out a bit more about your neighbourhood, you can check out our Auckland Council Heritage Unit area studies. So we've added these to the Auckland Council website. There are currently 11 studies online, including the Albert Eden one, I believe. I've clicked the wrong bit. And more will be added as they are made. And if your house is scheduled under the Auckland Unitary Plan, the Heritage Unit should have some information about your house. You can find out, you probably should know, but if you want to check, you can find out if your house is scheduled through 14.1, and just plug in the address and you'll find it there, or plug in the deposited plan number. The amount of information we will hold will vary. It could be Legacy Council documentation, or it could be a historical summary written by me or another historian along the way. And the best way to find out about that is to contact us at the Heritage Unit if your house is scheduled. If your property was designed by a known architect, it's worthwhile contacting the Auckland University Special Collection. So you probably heard a few years ago that the Architecture Library closed and was merged with the rest of the university system. This is where the Architecture Collection is now. The collection includes plans and drawings by known architects, architects' biographical files, journals and publications. You don't have to be a student or associated with the university to access special collections, anybody can. And they're often able to retrieve things for you very quickly, but if you want something oversized like a plan, then you need to contact them to make an appointment. And if they do hold your plans, you're in for a treat because they're often extremely beautiful and hand-coloured, as Vicky showed us before. Now, this is quite a new archive to me, but if you're interested in a former state house, Kāinga Ora holds a large archive about individual former state houses, including photographs, the drainage plans that Vicky was talking about, and architectural plans. For example, they have 20 to 30,000 microfiche plans for houses built between 1937 and 1987. And that's individual houses, not just the generic plans that we might associate with them. And you can contact them directly via this email address. And we talked a little bit about Papers Past and what a valuable tool that is for people doing any kinds of historical research. You can just plug your name, your person's name or your street address in, and you never know what you'll find. And you can also use things like trade journals, which are available on Papers Past. This is the New Zealand Building Progress, and they have 1905 to 1923 available online. And Joanne's already talked a little bit about home and building, but I wanted to share another fibrillite image, coincidentally, with you. These are a fantastic resource that have recently gone up through the Victorian University of Wellington, and it's 1936 to 1998. And we'll have a lot of information about the materials possibly used in your house, as well as the architect and if people wanted their house profiled. And what about the people who actually lived in your house? Once you've been through the title, you should have some names to start plugging into the Auckland Libraries database searches, Archway or Papers Past. Even if people aren't famous, they leave behind traces in the archives. You'll be amazed what you find when you put someone into Archway. You'll likely come across details of their will or probate, which is often digitised and free to download, or information about divorces, land transfers, bankruptcies, or misdemeanours. If they've done something dodgy, you can find them in the police gazettes. And the digitisation of service records from the First World War has opened up lots of avenues for research. There are websites like Find a Grave and Million Graves, which also have images of headstones, which have biographical information, and you can utilise genealogy research at your local library. You can also use... Oh, I have lost a section somehow. That's a bit weird. Anyway, I can talk about that instead. A bit more information about the context of your house. So if you know that a house cost a certain amount of money or a tender was put out for a certain amount, this is the Reserve Bank inflation calculator. This goes back to 1860, so you can type in £1 in 1860 and find out how much that is valued at now. So in 1914, £1 worth of grocery would now cost $155. So this is really a great way of finding out a bit more of the context and relative values of incomes and also purchases. And this is my last slide. There is also the Historical Births, Deaths and Marriages archive database, which is available through the Department of Internal Affairs, and you can use this to find out basic biographical information about people. So these are historical only. For example, the birth had to have occurred 100 years ago or the death 50 years ago. And they're very useful because you don't actually have to get the certificate and pay $33 to find out basic information. So the top line is a marriage record, and it shows that they were married in 1868, and the woman and the man. And the bottom one is a death record showing that he died in 1897, age 66. So that's quite useful information to find, because then you can try and find their obituary in one of the local papers. But be warned, Manuel Ignacio and Emmanuel Ignatius are the same person, my great-great-grandfather. So it's best to start in a general way and then narrow names down. And I think that is me. If you would like to get in touch about the CHI access, just contact that top address. And if you'd like to find out more about your scheduled place, we'd have a research inquiry, then the second one. Thank you.